Let's move now to the United Kingdom, where restrictions have been lifted despite it having some of its highest COVID-19 cases in the past 6 months. Also, Boris Johnson has annoyed some people by saying if you want to dance, you've got to prove you've had the COVID jab. Let's get the latest from our London correspondent, Olly Barratt. Hello, Olly. So how was the first full day of freedom, looking back over the past 24 hours?
Well, for many people, they've been able to get back to doing things that they haven't done for many, many months. Some people have been going to nightclubs, for example. Others have been taking off their masks in some public and outdoor settings. Some businesses have been able to reopen that have been shuttered due to COVID-19 restrictions. Other businesses have been able to take in more customers than they've been able to for months. And many of those people are very much welcoming the change, effectively seeing all restrictions really removed now on activity in the English economy. Some early teething problems, though, as Boris Johnson was setting out on Monday, the so-called Freedom Day, although he's not really calling it that anymore himself. The two scientific advisors that were alongside him at the press conference, albeit in different rooms because he is self-isolating at the moment, expressed real caution about indoor settings and crowds of people in places like nightclubs, and that is leading to all sorts of speculation that that could be something that the government has to U-turn on in the not-too-distant future if it leads to super-spreader events. We've seen that in the Netherlands recently, where they removed all restrictions on nightclubs and then had to reverse when they saw them spreading cases. So that is something very much to keep an eye on. Those young people who've been heading back into the nightclubs worrying now about exactly how long they'll be able to keep doing that for.
What is the rule on masks now that most of the population's been vaccinated?
So the rules are now guidance rather than legislation and mandates. So the government is setting out where you might want to wear a mask in certain circumstances. And that is what the government says is the change in tone that is now needed, away from government mandates and legislation towards what it calls personal responsibility. But that ran into early trouble as well, because then the government came out and said, actually, on public transport, you probably should wear a mask. London transport providers said, yeah, we're going to make sure people wear a mask if they want to get on our tubes and our trains. And the opposition Labour Party said, well, why are you removing that mandate if you feel so strongly that people should indeed still be wearing masks? Anecdotally, over the last few days, you have seen fewer people out and about wearing masks, but many people still are doing so when they go into shops, when they get on buses and trains and trams. But for many people, the government guidance being just that, guidance rather than legislation and mandates, has been the moment that they've decided to throw those masks off whenever they can.
I think it's developing a very important discussion around freedom and your rights, because if you can show you've had both your jabs, for example, you can probably travel more freely, or you can get into a nightclub. But conversely, if you choose not to have the vaccination, surely those people can argue that their freedoms are being unfairly restricted.
Absolutely they can, and absolutely they are right now in the UK. It is a very live debate indeed, especially when it comes to nightclubs, for example. Boris Johnson, as he announced that Freedom Day was going ahead on Monday, also announced that from the end of September you'll have to prove you've been double vaccinated to get into a nightclub. Now, we understand that that is very much to try and encourage young people who haven't yet been jabbed to go out and do so. The idea that in a few weeks' time it might be that some of their freedoms are curtailed if they haven't been vaccinated. But that's come in for huge criticism. Some rights groups say it's not right. It also leads to a discussion, a live discussion around race, because we are seeing lower vaccine take-up rates in some ethnic minority communities here in the UK. So people are looking at things like nightclubs and saying, are you really saying that you're going to restrict entry to nightclubs to some ethnic minority groups more than others because they have lower vaccination take-up? So it's deeply controversial. There is the suspicion that actually the government might not ever end up doing this. It might not ever end up insisting on proof of double vaccination, that what it's really trying to do is encourage young people to go and get jabbed so that it doesn't need to go ahead with the plan and impose that.
All right, thank you so much. That's Olly Barratt coming to us live from London this evening. Still ahead,